In this edition of Art Rocks, a photographer looks to the sky for a healing presence.
Now that I've retired, I feel like I can really open up a little bit more and show some of the spiritual side of my nature.
Young artists push back against stereotypes.
So I think it's the artist's responsibility to comment on society and mark time.
A European cellist delights American audiences.
I put my heart completely into every single opportunity that I get.
And a gifted illustrator tries her hand at another art form.
I like to evoke smiles and happiness when people view my work.
It's all ahead on this edition of Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine, and this is Art Rocks. In his latest book, photographer A.J. Meek looks to the clouds for healing energy and the simplicity of children, reflecting on the concept of hope. Let's have a look.
Charlie Brown and Linus were lying on their back looking up at the sky, looking at the clouds, and Linus says, I think I see Beethoven writing his Fifth Symphony, and Charlie Brown says, all I see is a horsey.
The sky is an ever-changing abstraction in A.J. Meek's latest book, where photographs of clouds are paired with the observations of children.
The idea of this book on clouds, it was a little intimidating at first because, every artist, photographer that's been trained knows about the work that cellist did. Any other artist that photographs a similar subject matter is, has a certain trepidation of fear associated with photographing the sky.
His inspiration for the book came while he was in New Mexico.
I had retired from LSU in School of Art and Photography in 2005, and I was teaching in the honors program at the University of New Mexico, and it was a real great time. We had a great time, but I could not avoid seeing and being influenced by the sky in New Mexico. It's so beautiful with those cobalt blue skies and this really, really intense light. I was inspired by that sky, and I started making photographs. When I got back to Louisiana, I continued the project. What I wanted to do is I wanted to include the perceptions of hope by children, and those were done by family and friends. I asked them first, of course, and I didn't want to include the pictures for the children to see to illustrate, so I gave them key words such as angels, donuts, whatever, and some things like that, and then they responded to that.
A donut tastes like sugar made from happiness.
I was also helped out a lot by the Runnels School here in Baton Rouge, and the English professors gave an assignment to their students.
Windy clouds, cotton balls on a string, pulled by time, pushed by wind, float overhead, held in the sky by the push of wind. This
work was inspired by the Native American concept of a sacred space. It's a place that they go to, they can commune with nature, and they can't really hold any kind of negative thought while they're observing a sacred mountain or a sacred place. The same was true for me with the title, The Healing Presence, as a concept that I wanted to put forth is when you look at these photographs, you can't hold a negative thought. And then when you read the children's perceptions, you get more information. And that was based on that idea.
The illuminating presence of the sky is what helps us stay alive. Up above is where they float. The sky, the sea, the clouds, a boat. Meek has authored 6 books of photography. His penchant for landscapes has been a recurring theme in his work.
You know, I've always considered myself a documentary photographer, you know, with an artistic bent. What that means exactly is that, you know, I'm really concerned with what is before the camera. Using the camera to record, you know, things in front of the camera. And that's kind of documentary. It's kind of artistic if you use the light properly. And so those are the kind of things that I've really found myself interested in.
Angels have halos, wings, white dresses, and yellow shoes.
Some people ask me, do I miss the old analog photography, the old dark rooms? And you know, seriously speaking, I mean, I'm really grateful for getting out of that. I really like darkroom work, but I really am grateful for, you know, the advancements of technology, because digital photography is less polluting than the old way. A photographer, you know, uses heavy metals and very polluting darkroom chemicals, and the old way, you know, even though it's quite beautiful, I'm grateful that, you know, I no longer work in the darkroom. Those were really pretty rough days.
If I were a cloud, I'd soar above the world with all the freedom I could imagine, just waiting for the wind to take me somewhere new.
Especially after my retirement from LSU, I wanted to use my work, my talent, you know, as a kind of a ministry. I mean, in a way, you know, because you know, it's something I couldn't do or didn't feel like I really could do, you know, as an academic teacher or photographer. And so now that I've retired, I feel like I can really open up a little bit more and show some of the spiritual side of my nature and some of the spiritualness of the work that I'm trying to do.
Heaven is above the clouds, and there's houses and buildings there, and our kitties.
Now, let's take a look at some of the upcoming arts events happening across Louisiana. For more information on these events, visit the website at lpb.org/artrocks. And you can find more arts connections at countryroadsmag.com. In our next segment, reporter Carrie Saldo stops by the Cross Currents exhibit in Denver, Colorado, where Native American artists address the conflict of safeguarding tradition in the face of change. But leave any preconceived notions at the door. This talented group is adamantly contemporary.
The phrase contemporary Native American artist, to me, is just another label.
People use that so that they easily know what it is.
So much of what is indigenous to North America isn't identifiable to the popular culture anyway.
People are very skeptical of things they don't understand or that defy labels.
I am here now, so I am contemporary, I am Native American, and I am an artist. I don't want it to be any more loaded than that.
People have come in and they've expressed over and over again that they didn't know what it meant to see contemporary Native American art. We really strive to bring in contemporary work that helps challenge preconceived notions of the world. These artists were brought together for Cross Currents because they're making successful, progressive, contemporary work. They're offering positive change in thinking and creating new works that give us a different way of understanding indigeneity in contemporary society.
People hear contemporary Native art and think beads and feathers. there are these things that are imagined to be very native because of the material or the pattern. And so there is, I think, a desire to see that when people are trying to grab onto something they understand. And I think that's always true in art. And not just in art, it's in life. Things that are not easily understood, things that we can't grab onto easily, are a little bit scary. What I think is the biggest disconnect is that the work doesn't fit neatly into a box of what people think about when they think about, you know, contemporary Native art. There are certain pieces that I think people understand better in the context of Native art, and other pieces that people feel, I'm like, well, how is this Indian art?
In talking with several of the artists who are in the exhibit, there's a really strong personal connection for each of these artists. Wanted to ask you, though, how do you think that that very personal work is more broadly accessible to someone who doesn't have that connection?
Well, I think the personal connection is what makes the work so powerful. That is why these artists are so successful. They're pouring their own personal stories and histories into the work. But we all have connections through these personal histories that we can relate to. We all have a heritage, we all have ancestry, and we all have experienced someone having a preconceived notion about who we are. And so we can understand where that is coming from.
The work that I wanted to see that described my experience in my life wasn't being made. So I sort of subconsciously, then consciously decided to make that work that was speaking about the contemporary Native existence and experience and life at the beginning of the 21st century, with all of our sort of complex issues and existing in not just two worlds anymore, many worlds.
For me personally, as a woman whose ancestry is complicated and a combination of settlers and indigenous people, I'm really aware of the violent history of colonialism in North America specifically. Thinking about those things is actually a way to expand my own experience and my own personal connection to larger issues in the world, historically and contemporary, and to find a way to talk about these things that are really difficult and to think about these things that are really difficult in a way that's not super specific to my own cultural background and my own cultural experience. I am interested in making work that can speak to something broader.
I've always set my sights on a larger audience, not necessarily a provincial audience in the Southwest. I've always done national shows and had international shows, so I'm inching towards getting into the national and international conversation as far as what my work is about and sort of how my voice is valid and can be heard in those conversations and taken seriously.
These two pieces, My Basket Story and Weaving the Bayou, are both a part of a larger series called Weaving Water. One of the things that came up in my travels for this particular series was this idea of migration of culture and having different cultures coming into contact with one another via water.
There is a dialogue going on, and some of these artists are really saying we don't have to accept Hollywood's interpretation of what it means to be Indigenous. But I think also these artists are really standing up to say that these cultures are growing and changing, and they're alive today. And so these are people in the 21st century, and they are influenced by media, other artists, and other cultures. And so all those things come together and create who these artists are and also what the work is.
The idea behind this work is the destruction of something without utilizing any of it. It was important for me to build this body of work in this space to show the waste. The thrift store clothes from the beginning are clothes that have been worn and then discarded for somebody else to purchase and wear again. I ended that cycle by taking those clothes and then breaking them down. So there is a level of contradiction in that whole process. So there's a little tongue-in-cheek to me, you know, in the building of it, that it is hypocritical, you know, and I just try to keep the hip and hypocritical.
The power of art is that it can change and alter people's perceptions of different cultures or the world in general. Each of these artists, I think, really does that in either a very direct or subtle way.
Art and artists have a responsibility to their little window in time. They're sort of like the storytellers, the information holders. They kind of hold a mirror up to society and point out very specific things about that period of time that they exist in. So I think it's the artist's responsibility to comment on society and mark time.
Next, we'll meet a Polish émigré who arrived stateside with an incredible gift. Having risen to the prestigious role of principal cellist for the Baltimore Symphony, this musician wows American audiences each time he plays.
When I was about 6 or 7 years old, back in Warsaw, Poland, my parents took me to a elementary music school. You got a choice of violin, cello, or piano, and it happened that I was already very tall for a 6-year-old, and cello was a natural choice for me at that point, and I've been playing ever since. My name is Dariusz Skoraczewski. I'm a cellist, principal cellist of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Mainly I've been playing in Baltimore Symphony, but I've played in many chamber groups, piano trio and quartets, in sextets, octets, just about any configuration of instruments. I think the cello is just a very beautiful instrument, especially when you play things like Bach solo suites, when it's quiet and mellow, and it's just beautiful. What I try to do in my performances is make the audience, first of all, understand the piece, especially if they haven't heard it before. I try to play as beautifully as humanly possible, always doing, 200% of my effort. I absolutely strive for technical perfection. I've played very early music and Baroque music, classical music, romantic, 20th century. Modern music is something that I really like. Lutosławski Sahar variation, I really love that piece. It explores different techniques that our audiences sometimes are not used to those. I try to be fully engaged always in a performance. I put my heart completely into every single opportunity that I get.
For more, visit dscorer.com. Now it's time to explore another of Louisiana's treasures. Each week on Art Rocks, we celebrate and examine an artistic or cultural element with unique ties to Louisiana. This week, we'll look at the neighborhood in our state capital known as Spanish Town.
Widely known for its flamboyant and raucous Mardi Gras parade that attracts hundreds of thousands to downtown Baton Rouge, the neighborhood of Spanish Town is actually the oldest one in the capital city. Its origins date back to 1805, when Baton Rouge was still part of West Florida, an extension of what is today known as the Florida Panhandle, owned at the time by the Spanish. Just 5 years later, the area was annexed by the United States to house federal troops who remained until Baton Rouge joined the Confederacy in 1861. A year later, nearly all of the original homes in the neighborhood were destroyed in the Battle of Baton Rouge, which took place primarily in Spanish Town, leaving almost no trace of the area's Spanish roots. The character of the neighborhood began to take shape in the years following the Civil War, as freed slaves began to populate the area, building shotgun-style houses. In the 1890s, with LSU in close proximity, students and faculty began taking up residence in Spanish Town. The main architectural styles that we see in present-day Spanish Town are late Victorian-style homes of the 1890s and the bungalow-style homes of the 1920s. These bungalows, or craftsman homes, were influenced by the arts and crafts movement, initiated by designers looking for a return to well-crafted, handmade furniture and homes. Modern-day Spanish Town is truly a hodgepodge of architectural styles, with inhabitants as diverse as their exteriors. The neighborhood reflects a whimsically artful appeal characterized by their mascot, the pink flamingo lawn ornament. As any local would say with a touch of rebellious fun, bad taste is better than no taste at all.
Up next, we meet a crafty Floridian who was looking for a change of pace after years in the newsroom. With a distinguished career behind her, Lisa Frasier now cultivates a newfound love for pottery, making clay creations with such finesse, it's as if she's been doing it her whole life.
It wasn't until a few years ago that I found a new passion for art, and that was clay. I have always been an artist all my life, but I spent most of my life as an editorial newsroom artist for major metropolitan newspapers, and there I created illustrations and informational graphics and even some news design. Well, working in the news business, it's always very fast-paced and very sometimes chaotic, but also very exciting, so I'm working on several assignments at the same time, and I wanted to learn patience again. It's when I decided to go into more of a traditional medium and work with my hands. That's how I come to fine clay. I prefer to sculpt pieces that are whimsical. I like to evoke smiles and happiness when people view my work. And I also think it's important that my work be functional too. Every artist that starts out with clay has to find a clay that they like and work with it with your fingers and find out the consistency and the texture. I'm not a person that uses the wheel. I don't throw clay on the wheel. I tried it a little bit, but I found it to be not very controlling. You're just going in one motion. I start out with a sketch of an idea. From there, I take it to the clay, and I use slabs of clay, and they may be like 1/4 of an inch thick. And then I'll use some forms to get a specific shape, like a round shape, like a bowl or something I see in my garage. I'll use it as a form. And then you have to go through the drying process to get the clay to firm up. I like to let my pieces dry very slowly and naturally. I don't like to force it with heat. And also it helps eliminate cracking when you do that too. And then once the clay is dry enough in what is called a leather state or a greenware state, it has no water left to it. That's when it goes to the kiln and is fired for what is called the bisque state, and then that's when you go into the glazing state. And I treat my pieces like they're a canvas, so I'm painting as I go with glazes. I use a lot of colors to my pieces. And then once that's done, and the glaze is completely dry, then it goes into the kiln again. And that's where it is fired for a very long time. I've always loved animals. I find them as my main inspiration. And I have a cat and a dog, and I love their personalities. My cat and my dog seem to be best friends. So this will be my third year at the Orlando Pottery Festival. The festival is a great idea. I think it's important that there be art in the community. It can be therapeutic, it can be educational. It's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of talented people out there that really need to get their talent shown.
For more, visit bnrtst.com. And that wraps it up for this edition of Art Rocks. Be sure to drop in online at lpb.org/artrocks, where you can catch up on any episodes you've missed and find information on upcoming arts events. So until next time, I'm James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.